What if the most beautiful place you've ever seen could kill you without making a sound? In 1986, more than 1,700 people died near a peaceful African lake. There was no war, no earthquake, no visible explosion, no warning that anyone could understand, just an invisible cloud moving silently through the darkness. And the most terrifying part? Nobody knew it was coming. Imagine standing beside one of the most beautiful lakes on Earth, with someone you love. The water is calm, the air is warm, the mountains surround you like a wall. You hear birds in the distance. You watch the sunset together. For a moment, the world feels completely safe. But beneath that beautiful surface, something deadly is waiting. The lake was called Nyos. It sits inside the crater of an ancient volcano in northwestern Cameroon. For generations, people lived around it. Families farmed the land. Children played nearby. Animals grazed in the surrounding valleys. And the lake itself looked harmless. Nobody looking at its peaceful blue surface could have imagined that deep below it, an invisible killer was slowly accumulating. The killer was carbon dioxide. Deep beneath Lake Nyos, volcanic activity was releasing enormous amounts of the gas. Normally, the gas remained dissolved in the deep water, but year after year, more carbon dioxide accumulated. The lake was becoming something like a giant pressure chamber, and almost nobody knew it. Then came August 21st, 1986. The people living around Lake Nyos were going about an ordinary evening. Families were eating, farmers were resting, children were sleeping, and somewhere nearby, two young people could have been making plans for the future, talking about tomorrow, or simply enjoying another quiet evening together. They had no reason to believe that there might not be a tomorrow for many people around them. Then, sometime during the night, something changed. Scientists believe that a sudden disturbance caused the deep, carbon dioxide-rich water to rise. As that water rose, the pressure around the gas decreased, and when the pressure dropped, the carbon dioxide began escaping. More deep water rose, more gas escaped, and the process accelerated, until suddenly, Lake Nyos released an enormous amount of carbon dioxide into the atmosphere. But this was not a volcanic eruption like the ones we see in movies. There was no river of lava, no giant fireball, no burning mountain. The killer was invisible. Carbon dioxide is colorless. It has no dramatic appearance. And because it is heavier than ordinary air, it began flowing downward, into the valleys, toward homes, toward farms, toward sleeping families. Like an invisible tide, people began collapsing. Animals died, cattle, birds, dogs, and then people. Entire families were overwhelmed while they slept. Some survivors later described waking to a strange silence. The animals were gone, people were lying motionless, and nobody understood what had happened. Imagine searching for someone you love and finding an entire community strangely silent. There was no enemy to fight, no fire to escape, no visible danger to run from. The danger was the air itself. By morning, the horror became impossible to ignore. More than 1,700 people had died. Thousands of animals were also killed. Entire families disappeared overnight. And yet, the landscape itself looked almost untouched. The mountains were still there. The trees were still standing. The lake was still beautiful. The sun rose over the valley as if nothing had happened. That contrast made the disaster even more terrifying. For the survivors, one question remained: what had killed them? At first, the answer was not obvious. There was no conventional explosion, no widespread fire, no obvious poison. Scientists began investigating the lake, and eventually, they discovered something extraordinary. The water contained enormous concentrations of dissolved carbon dioxide. The disaster had been caused by a rare phenomenon known as a limnic eruption. Think of it like opening a bottle of carbonated water. When the pressure changes, dissolved gas suddenly escapes. Now imagine that bottle is an enormous volcanic lake, and instead of a little gas, it contains millions of tons of carbon dioxide. Once the deep water was disturbed, the gas escaped with tremendous force. The lake essentially released its hidden reservoir of carbon dioxide, and the surrounding valleys became filled with invisible, suffocating gas. And this is where the story becomes even more unsettling. Lake Nyos did not look dangerous before the disaster. It didn't look dangerous afterward. Even today, the lake can appear breathtaking. Blue water, green mountains, clouds drifting across the sky. A place that looks peaceful enough for two people to stand beside each other, hold hands, and watch the sunset. But beneath that beauty is a reminder of what happened here. The most dangerous places don't always look dangerous. The tragedy of Lake Nyos also changed how scientists understood certain volcanic lakes. Monitoring systems were developed. Scientists began studying gas levels more closely, and measures were taken to reduce the danger of another catastrophic gas release. But the memory of that night remains, because Lake Nyos taught the world something frightening. Nature does not always announce its power. Sometimes it whispers. Imagine the last peaceful moment before the disaster. A couple watching the sunset, a mother preparing food for her children, a farmer returning home, someone making plans for the next morning. Ordinary moments that suddenly became their final moments. That's what makes this story so haunting. The victims weren't standing in front of an erupting volcano. They weren't running from a storm. They were simply living their lives when something invisible changed the air around them. Perhaps that's the greatest mystery of Lake Nyos. How could something so beautiful hide something so deadly? The lake didn't look angry. It didn't roar. It didn't send a warning across the valley. It simply released what had been building beneath its surface, and thousands of lives were changed forever. Lake Nyos is still there, beautiful, quiet, almost inviting. But its history tells us something we should never forget. Danger doesn't always arrive with a sound. Sometimes, the most terrifying thing in the world is the thing you cannot see. If you enjoy true stories from history that sound almost too strange to be real, follow Curiosity Archives, because history isn't just about kings, wars, and empires. Sometimes, the most incredible stories are hiding in places that look completely ordinary.